So Katie Hobbs, so far, has held four different political positions throughout her tenure, throughout her political career. So her first position was a state representative, and she was only a one-term representative there. She was there from 2010 to 2012, and let's look into a little bit about what she did or attempted to do there or advocated to do. Katie Hobbs served in the Arizona House of Representatives from 2010 to 2012, representing District 15. During her tenure, she focused on issues such as domestic violence prevention, social services, and education. While specific details about the bills she introduced, sponsored, or co sponsored are not readily available in the provided sources, her background as a social worker and her role as Director of Government Relations at Sojourner Center, a prominent domestic violence shelter, indicate her legislative priorities likely centered on social justice and support for vulnerable populations. Her commitment to these issues is further evidenced by her subsequent political roles, including her service in the Arizona State Senate from 2012 to 2018, where she was elected as Senate Majority Leader in 2015. Senate Minority Leader, I'm sorry. She continued to advocate for policies aimed at improving social services and protecting individual rights. Okay, so I didn't expect there to be a lot there with her tenure as a state representative. Let's get to state senator. Now, she was a state senator from 2012 to 2018. Let's see. In 2015, during her first term as minority leader, her staffer, Talanya Adams, a black woman, complained to her about her concerns regarding racial and gender based discrimination and was later fired in part by Hobbs. In November of 2021, Adams won a discrimination lawsuit related to her firing and was rewarded a judgment of $2.75 million. Wow. Okay, wow. Hobbs did not run for another term in the state Senate, deciding to run for Secretary of State. Here's her next thing, Secretary of State. Now, guys, by the time I get to her governor part, that's going to be a lot better. Okay, just so you know. I told you not everything here was going to be perfect. So she was Secretary of State from 2018 to 2022, and she implemented several key initiatives here. Election integrity and security, modernization efforts. She led the transformation of the Secretary of State's office by modernizing systems and addressing previous inefficiencies. Combating misinformation. She actively countered misinformation from both foreign and domestic sources, ensuring that accurate information was disseminated to the public. Legislative leadership, bipartisan collaboration. Throughout her tenure, she established a proven track record of bipartisan leadership and accomplishments, working across party lines to address the concerns of Arizonans. I thought it was Arizonian, but apparently it's Arizonan. I just feel like Arizonian just sounds better. I think that should be the word for it, but whatever. Advocacy for voting rights, voter access. She worked to ensure that all Arizonans had access to the resource necessary to vote, emphasizing the importance of protecting voting rights. These efforts reflect her commitment to enhancing efficiency, security, and accessibility of all of Arizona's electoral processes during her tenure as Secretary of State. And now we get to her tenure as governor. Healthcare initiatives, gender affirming care. In June of 2023, Governor Hobbs signed Executive Order 23-12, directing the Arizona Department of Administration to remove exclusions for gender affirming surgery from state employee health insurance plans. This action ensures that transgender state employees have access to medically necessary procedures under their insurance coverage. Ban on conversion therapy. This is also what Tim Walz did in his state, too. On the same day, she issued an executive order prohibiting state agencies from using funds to promote or facilitate conversion therapy for minors, aligning state practices with established medical standards and protecting LGBT youth. Education enhancements. In September of 2024, Governor Hobbs signed an executive order establishing the Talent Ready Arizona Initiative, allocating $25 million to workforce development. This program focuses on training individuals for high-demand sectors such as construction, manufacturing, and healthcare, thereby strengthening the state's workforce and providing educational opportunities aligned with industry needs. Support for workers and unions. In January of 2023, Governor Hobbs signed an executive order extending employment protections to state employees and contractors, explicitly prohibiting discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. This measure promotes a more inclusive and equitable workplace environment for all state workers. These actions reflect her commitment to advocating healthcare accessibility, enhancing educational opportunities, and fostering a supportive environment for workers and unions in Arizona. Let me see. Here's some medical debt relief. Now, this is actually my favorite one from her. This one is, in my opinion, the best one. And more Democratic governors need to follow suit to this. I think Ned Lamont did this in Connecticut. I'll get to that in another video. In March of 2024, Governor Hobbs announced a partnership with the nonprofit organization RIP Medical Debt to eliminate up to $2 billion in medical debt for Arizonans. This initiative utilizes $30 million from the American Rescue Plan Act, which was passed by Biden and Harris, to purchase and forgive medical debts, potentially benefiting up to 1 million residents. Long-term care facility oversight. In April of 2024, she signed House Bill 2764, mandating stricter standards and oversight for long-term assisted living facilities. The law requires the Arizona Department of Health Services to implement enhanced regulations to ensure the health and safety of residents, particularly in memory care services. So again, I want to go back to that medical debt one because, it's funny because for the longest time people talk about student debt, and as a left-wing liberal, that's something I highly support, is getting rid of student debt. And it's funny because I remember a couple years ago, I was talking with my grandma about this, and she was saying, well, they only talk about student debt. You got other forms of debt. What about medical debt? Some other people say, well, what about auto debt? You got mortgage debt, you got credit card debt, all this different stuff. And I said, I looked it up and I looked at the numbers. And I said, I saw that first of all, mortgage debt is the very highest out that group. And it's basically impossible to tackle that, for the government to tackle that. Well, I don't know if impossible, but it's something that impossible in the sense that, is that going to get done, or are we going to push the government to do that? I don't think so. Mortgage debt right now is between 18 and $20 trillion. And it might even be higher than that. I saw one of them that I think said about 21 million, but most of the articles and the sources that I read on that, the numbers were averaged between, 15 to 18 trillion. But it's pretty high. It's up there. But you look at student debt, which is about 1.7, 1.8 trillion. You have auto debt at about 1.6 trillion. You have credit card debt, which is about 1.1 or 1.2 trillion. All these numbers are in the trillions, but when you look at medical debt is between 1 and 200 billion. Now, granted, the Biden administration, I think, made a good move because they took the medical debt from almost 200 billion and they reduced it down to 88 billion. But since then, the number also went up because people continued to go in debt, whether it deals with some people mismanaging their money or not knowing how to budget, or just, or not saving enough, or like I said, they go to hospitals and doctors' offices and money just racks up, and depending on what they pay for their premiums and their deductibles, or if they even have access to the right care or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of different factors to that. And so I took my grandma's advice. I said, okay, let's talk about medical debt. And we've been pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And boom, the Biden and Harris administration does something about it. Katie Hobbs did that in Arizona. Another governor did that. And now we're pushing other Democratic governors and Congress people and senators to go about that. So now this can become part of the Democratic platform, which, again, this is going to help people because we all know medical debt is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America. And sadly enough, people don't talk about that. I didn't even know that until a couple years ago. So there's that. Okay, here we have the education and workers' rights. Budget adjustments. Facing a significant budget shortfall, Governor Hobbs signed a series of budget bills in June of 2024 that included reductions in higher education funding and trims to state agency budgets. These measures were a part of a bipartisan effort to address a $1.8 billion deficit and stabilize the state's financial situation. Reproductive health legislation. Repeal of 1864 abortion ban. In May of 2024, Governor Hobbs signed a bill repealing a Civil War-era law that banned most abortions in Arizona. The repeal, which took effect in September, nullified the 1864 statute that had been reinstated by the Arizona Supreme Court earlier in the year. These legislative actions underscore her commitment to improving healthcare access, ensuring the safety of vulnerable populations, and addressing complex budgetary challenges in Arizona. So that's what she did so far. So she just got elected in 2022, and I'm assuming she's probably going to run for re-election in 2026. I'm just assuming that, and so by the time this term is over, and by the time she goes into the next term, if she's reelected, there's going to be, I'm sure she's going to have more accomplishments, and also depending on what the state houses look like down there. And then in other videos, I'll be covering more of that. So that's that right there. And like I said, there are some things on there that weren't really my strongest issues. I don't care as much for, in terms of like things that I've been pushing. Because like I said, my top things are healthcare, education, unions, workers' wages. So the other stuff, it's like, okay, good for the people that benefited. But like I said, I knew that there were some things in here that's like, that's all right. This maybe. But the medical debt one, I think that's her biggest one. And I'll talk about her in another video, talking about what her approval rating and favorability ratings are down there. And once I know for sure that she's running for re-election, I'll be pushing her again. So I'm glad she won in 2022. Seems like she's been a good governor down there. And yeah, so that's that. So just keeping you all educated and informed. Subscribe to my YouTube, follow my Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, so wherever you're watching this at, go to my About section. All of my social media links and my contact information, email address, number, all that stuff is in the About section. Go there. You have any questions, comment, reach out to me. Call, text, email, message me. Just keeping you posted. Stay tuned.